Welcome to Fly on the Wall. We are your hosts. I am Jonathan Matthias Lassiter.
And I am Marquita Moten.
So, who the hell are we?
I am a master's level therapist with a degree in clinical mental health. I am also a natural healer, energy worker, and spiritualist.
And one of my best friends. Hey,
Yes.
we best friends, y'all. And I am a licensed clinical psychologist, professor, award-winning author, and I'm working on my second book.
Wait.
Yes, you know I am. Looking at race and mental health in contemporary America, trying to get our minds right, talking to us.
Yes.
So, what are we talking about today, Keita?
Well, according to you, we're talking about active spirituality and how we use that to combat or to manage or work through. I like that better. How we use active spirituality to work through emotional distress, whether it's on a personal level or a national level, which for people who look like us has been very heavy lately.
Yes. There's definitely been a lot of heaviness lately. You and I were discussing before about how there's always this underlying force of anti-Blackness, globally speaking, in every aspect, right? So in systems of finance, in housing, in healthcare, in education system, in households and communities, churches even, mosques, all these places where there's anti-Blackness. And then more frequently, in say since 2008, we've been hearing more frequently about Black death at the hands of police officers. Again, that's always been happening, but we have the technological means now for it to be on display, for it to be dispersed more widely. But with that connection and that dispersal becomes vicarious trauma, right? And so I know that I've been feeling some vicarious trauma recently, and I was on Twitter because I try to maintain an active Twitter presence. Follow me at MattJL, by the way. But I've tried to maintain an active Twitter presence and really focus on speaking to Black people and not so much speaking to white people and non-Black people, because I know I follow a lot of MDs, physicians, and social justice activists and things, and oftentimes they're speaking to the oppressor, trying to change the oppressor's mind. But I think that part of where active spirituality may come in is helping us fortify ourselves and not spend our time trying to convince non-Black people of anything.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, no one can change anyone else anyway. So working on oneself is really the only option you have. You can't save anybody else. You can't religiously, there's always people who think they can save you, whatever that means.
But you even the words say you got to work out your own salvation.
Exactly. But some people pick and choose which of the words support their own personal choices at the time. But you can't change anyone but yourself anyway. And so choosing a variety of ways to fortify one's spirit is definitely imperative.
So how would you define active spirituality? Because sometimes I get a little leery, and I know others do too, of when we're faced with anti-Blackness, sometimes we like, leave it up to God, and God got it all worked out, and so on and so forth. And there is some merit to that, but sometimes it could be seen as passivity. But we're talking about active spirituality. How do you define
I think active spirituality is the continued maintenance of your own connection with the divine. So it looks different for different people, but however you would engage in your spiritual practices, if everything was great, just continuing to do that. I think that that's active spirituality. So not necessarily engaging in the idea of waiting for God or the creator to do such and such for you, but also being open to the inspiration and recognizing the inspiration that is coming to you, flowing through you, and acting upon that.
Do you have any examples of that?
Well, I have things that I do to engage, participate in active spirituality. I personally like rituals. So I have developed some rituals of my own. And a ritual can be as simple as just a routine that gets you ready for your day. I know ritual may be a strong term for some people who associate it with something that they have a negative experience with. But ritual for me is just a series of habits that make me feel more connected to myself and to the whole. So some things I like to do, I like to use sage because I do believe that sage helps to transform the energy that is stagnant or we're not going to call it negative because energy is essentially neutral until you charge it. So everything is based off of the energy and the intent of the individual doing the work, right? That's why when people say they don't believe in or they think like tarot card reading is evil or something like that, then I always tell them it's the intent of the person doing the work. Because people can pray for your demise. Just because they call it prayer does not make it okay. So anyway, I like to sage to clear stagnant energy. I love different fragrances, as you know. Yeah. So I have different incense that I love to use. There is the spiritual belief in some cultures that smoke helps to carry prayers into the other realm or the spirit realm from the physical realm. And there's a process of transformation. So anyway, if there is something specific or someone specific that I would like to lend light and love to, sometimes I'll burn an incense or light a candle or something like that. But daily rituals typically include burning something that smells good to me, some type of incense, and meditation. And I like using, I guess we can call it affirmations, but I know some people use affirmations in a projective manner, like in order to get something that they feel is distant from them or to kind of fake it till they make it emotionally. But I like to use affirmations in the present. And by that, I mean just looking around and appreciating what I have. And I like to say those things aloud. So I do verbal appreciation lists. And that helps me as well. So what are some things you do?
No, I love that gratitude. I think in moments like this, that appreciation of things that we have in the present can be very helpful. Part of active spirituality for me is cultural affirmation. And what I mean by that is there's a Afrocentric saying that, we can call ourselves into existence. That part of healing is calling ourselves into existence.
Yeah.
But we must be sure that we're calling ourselves into existence from a base of affirmation, a base of truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of what we see as Black people is false. So much that we see that is projected on us is false.
Mm-hmm.
And even the premise of a Black man writing a check and it being seen as forgery, therefore I called police, is a false projection of that person onto the Black man, a false projection of criminality, a false projection of inferiority, a false projection of being a trickster, you know? So it's all of these false projections that as Black people, Black women, Black trans people, Black men, everyone, you know, Black children, you know, we can talk about adultification another time about how Black children are seen as adults earlier than white children, right? And then treated as such,
Yeah.
and in a way robbed of their childhood. So all of these things are false projections. And it's no wonder that oftentimes, more often than I would like, we internalize these false projections because it's kind of like I've heard the metaphor about being fish in water. The false projections are the water. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times we don't even know that we're swimming in them because it's the water that we're swimming in a world of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes real effort to combat that. And one of the ways that I do that is through spirituality, and spirituality being this cultural affirmation, this interconnectivity. Because in a spiritual sense, we're all connected, right?
Yes.
And anything that I do affects you and vice versa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in that regard, if I'm thinking about interconnectivity, and I'm thinking about interconnectivity with other Black people, then it's important for us all to have a healthy sense of who we are. And so a Black psychologist by the name of Wade Nobles talks about 3 different strategies that he uses to help in that cultural affirmation and to fortify that interconnectivity. Again, all within the spiritual realm. But one of them is cultural realignment. And so cultural realignment is this sense of us understanding the true history and the true present day achievements, accomplishments of other Black people.
Mm-hmm.
To connect with our ancestors, both recent and distant, to connect with the elders in our community and gain the knowledge from there and value that knowledge because oftentimes that knowledge is seen as inferior by the powers that be. Sometimes we can downplay that knowledge that's endemic to our communities, to our families. So
Right.
I think that's part of it. And you and I are reading Of Mules and Men right now. And so by Zora Neale Hurston. And so I keep saying Of Mules and Men, it's Mules and Men. I'm thinking of Mice and Men. And so
Right. Right.
but
I
Mules
do the
and
same thing.
Men right now by Zora Neale Hurston. And I think that's for me that's been connecting me more to that culture.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's great. Another one is um, what's called cognitive restructuring. And I know you know that term, but for everyone out there, it's this way in which we engage with the lies we have internalized and put on ourselves and ask ourselves, is this true? Is this really who I am, or is this a projection of who I am? And that could be easier said than done, but there are processes that can help people do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been engaging in that. And then finally is cultural refinement. And cultural refinement is this sense of just being sure that my actions align with those beliefs, with the spiritual beliefs. And so if one of my beliefs is that what I do affects you and what you do affects me, how am I acting in a way that ensures that all of my actions would not have a negative effect on you?
Right.
Right? So I think that's one of the ways in which I've been invoking active spirituality over here in my little courtyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that you brought up that we're reading Mules and Men as one of the ways of connecting because even though we may not be in her direct lineage, Miss Zora Neale Hurston is certainly one of our ancestors.
Yes.
And reading the book it feels like spending time with the ancestors. And I really appreciate that experience. And it's I think it's important to note that regardless of how people find themselves able to connect spiritually or whatever fuels them, the basis of it has to be self-awareness. Um, so I really like the questions that you pose. Is this true? Is this really who I am? Is this in alignment with what I believe? Because I think those questions in every situation can help people get to the truth of themselves and help them have more self awareness. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday about how a lot of people are saying that they just have to get out of the house because they're sick of their kids or they're sick of their spouses. And we discussed what that really means. Like, well, I'm not gonna get into how people raise their kids. In order to
Another discussion.
That's another discussion. But ultimately, it led us into discussing understanding what fuels you and what makes you happy. That's basically what we ended up discussing. Because if you are in a quarantine, which we all are, and you're finding yourself extremely uncomfortable with being with yourself, then to me that screams there's a huge opportunity for more self-awareness. Because what is the trouble? So yeah, I like those questions. So just asking yourself those questions. And even what would make me happy right now? Not anything external, but what can I do by myself that would make me feel happy in this moment?
And I would say, though, that sometimes for me, happiness is not enough, or happiness is, it's not adequate. And what we really need sometimes is peace and not happiness. And so I think happiness is definitely something that we can ask, and pursue at some moments. But I think that peace, especially in times like this, with the Black brutality being mass distributed, I know for me, I'm looking for peace. And I think those strategies that I mentioned earlier and the active spirituality that we've been discussing it's really been helping me find peace. And so in this moment, I just want to encourage everyone out there is to, as Marquita suggested, to ask, what brings me peace in this moment, and give yourself permission to pursue that and to embody that. Well, we could talk forever, but we are out of time because, we've got short digits, fans, and they got stuff to do. So, well,
that ain't got nothing to do. They quarantine.
They try to pursue what gives them peace, and this, so hopefully. Okay, so this has been Fly on the Wall. Thank you all for watching and sharing this time with Keita and I. And so, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, your loved ones, watch several times, and send us your questions and topics you would like for us to discuss at flyonthewallMH. MH stands for mental health. FlyonthewallMH at gmail.com. It is in all the information for the episode is in the text box below this video. So be sure to check that out. And we'll see you next time. Bye, Keita.
Bye-bye.